Good.
All right.
Yep.
I'll just do some quick introductions. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this COVID vaccine presentation. I'm Laura Luther. I'm with the Health Department. I am our Health Equity Supervisor during the COVID pandemic. So I'm doing health equity work as it relates to COVID-19. We have some fantastic speakers today that are joining us, both physicians. So we have Dr. Nawar Al-Janabi from MEDS, and we also have Dr. George Garrow from Primary Health Network. And Dr. Nawar, I believe, will be starting the presentation. Dr. Garrow will follow up, and then we'll save the end for any questions or comments that you may have for our physicians. So you can put those right in the chat box throughout the presentation, and then if there's anything that we need to address at the end, we'll absolutely give time for that. So I will let you take it away, Dr. Nawar.
Okay. So hello, everyone. And thank you for attending our presentation today about COVID vaccine. So my name is Dr. Nawar, and I'm a primary care physician with MEDS Clinic. So I'm going to start today talking about the COVID vaccine. And before we talk about the vaccine, I would like to give some idea about what's the meaning of immune response. So immune response is like our body reaction to foreign particles or foreign things coming inside our bodies, like viruses or bacteria. So when we expose to any virus, which is like COVID-19 virus, our body will make an antibodies. So these antibodies protects our body and can neutralize or fight against the foreign virus or the foreign bacteria. So we have in our body we have these antibodies, and also there is some antibodies that we can develop them only when we are exposed to the foreign body or to the virus. So on the first time, on the first exposure, if we develop, when we expose to the virus or to the bacteria, we develop an antibodies, and we call it primary response. And with the following exposure, every development of this protection will call secondary response. Sometimes there is a viruses which are very powerful and very strong, which can overcome our fight, our antibodies. So our body can make the antibodies, which is the way that the body can fight the infection, the cells that the body produce or the material that the body produce in order to fight the infection. Sometimes the virus can be very strong, and our antibody could not fight enough for it. So that's where we got the disease, the severe disease, or unfortunately the death. So some cases of COVID vaccine, the virus will can be much stronger than the immune response, or can lead to many complications that leads to this severe disease. So here the role of vaccine come to play, and we'll talk a little bit about the vaccine. So vaccine will protect against the severe disease and death due to COVID vaccine. Okay, before we talk about the vaccine, I want to talk a little bit about vaccine development. So the vaccine will teach the cells in our body to produce the defense mechanism, as we said, the immune response, the antibodies, the immune cells. So the vaccine will stimulate this process and make our body prepared to fight against the viruses. So also another thing that I want to mention specifically about the COVID vaccine, that you could not get COVID-19 from getting the vaccine. There is no any virus particle in the vaccine. So because I know that there's a lot of patients telling us, am I going to get the COVID from getting the vaccine? No, you could not get it. Normally, in normal circumstances, development of a vaccine will take a long time, years, matter of years, sometimes 6, 7, sometimes more than that. And then after they finish all the studies, uh, they have to submit their work to FDA for approval. So, so that's why, like most of the people concerned about the way that COVID vaccine get authorized because they think that it's fast on all these things. So, and I want to mention something before I go forward that COVID vaccine has emergency use authorization uh, from FDA. So I will talk normally, like in normal circumstances, what the scientists do to approve a vaccine. I'll talk very quickly about that. So when there is a disease of interest or a virus of interest that the scientists want to develop a vaccine against, they will do first like preclinical studies, which include researchers, which include like some experiment on animal models like rats, and it will take some period of time. It will take a couple years for that. Then if they find that it's safe on animal, they will go to something called the clinical studies, which is 3 phases. I have them on the next slide. So phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And uh, like they involve like clinical studies and they involve like, they do it like on volunteers. So on phase 1, uh, like they enroll about 20 to 100 volunteers and do like they administer the vaccine of interest to them. And at this like at this phase they will be focusing on the safety of the of this vaccine. If it's safe, then they will move to the phase 2, which more different like more people involved, and it's involved different people from different races and from different ethnicities. On phase 2, they will, like the scientists will be focusing on the safety of the vaccine and if it's developed any immune response. And finally, if it's safe and if it's like creating the immune response, which is the antibodies that we talked earlier, then they will go to phase 3 they where they see if the vaccine is preventing the disease from happening or not. These 3 phases normally take about 6 to 7 years. And after that, after the after the vaccine pass these 3 phases successfully, they will submit their work to FDA, and it will also take about a year or two for FDA to approve the vaccine. So what happened with COVID vaccine? Like most of the people are concerned about like the vaccine get approved quickly. Is any one of these steps get being like missed or skipped? So like the COVID virus, COVID-19, while it's a new virus, but it's well known to the scientists. We were having like SARS before, and there was a lot of studies has been made on this virus, which belongs to the same family. So the scientists know the family from where the virus came. So, and like a lot of studies, especially the preclinical and the phase 1 has been done on on SARS before. So they used this information in addition to the information that they have to create this vaccine. So, and for sure, they will not give the authorization without knowing that the vaccine is safe and it works. And also, like after the emergency use authorization, they will still making a lot of surveys, a lot of like studies to see how safe is it and if it works or not. So, in this slide, I will talk about like how the current COVID-19 vaccine got like developed so fast. So like as I said, like scientists from all over the world like shared all the information that they know to create this vaccine. Also funding because I think it's a major issue for the scientists and for the medication companies is to get funding for their projects. So funding was widely available. Also, as I said before, like maybe COVID-19 is new to general population, but for the scientists, they know a lot of information about the family of the virus. Okay. Yeah, so now I will talk about like the current available vaccines that we have. So now in the United States, we have 3 vaccines available. So the first one is Pfizer BioNTech, and it was like the first available vaccine, and like people age 16 and older are eligible for it. It's 2 intramuscular shots on the arm, on the upper arm, and it's like 21 days apart between them. Uh, Pfizer is like here in our area, it's available in the hospitals because it requires a specific temperature, like very ultra low cold temperature for transportation and for like storage. And it is like 95% effective, like the effectiveness of it, and it's 95% in preventing like symptomatic infection after the second dose. That's why they are giving 2 doses just to boost the, like to increase the effectiveness. And the other one is Moderna vaccine, which is the second available vaccine, and it's can like its storage is a little bit easier than the like the Pfizer one, and it's also given in 2 doses in the upper arm, and but it's not 3 weeks, it's 4 weeks apart, and sometimes we can like delay it until 42 days, and in case of not available, in case of the second shot is not available. People 18 and older are eligible for this vaccine, and it also has 95% effectiveness in preventing the symptoms of the virus 2 weeks after the second dose. Some studies say in patients or in people 65 years old or older have like 86% effectiveness. So I want to mention something simple like about Moderna and Pfizer. While they have the same mechanism of action, like they they uh, like they make your cell make a protein which is similar to the protein on the outer layer of the virus. So it's not the virus itself; it's a protein that's made similar to the outer layer of the virus. When you got it, your body will stimulate the like it's immune like your immune system gets stimulated, and your body will create the cells to fight the virus. So when you get the virus, your body is prepared to take care of it or neutralize it. So I'm talking about like Moderna and Pfizer because they are the same. They call them the mRNA vaccines. The third vaccine, which is recently authorized, is Johnson and Johnson. Uh, the good thing about it, it's 1 intramuscular dose. While I was reading some articles say that they may add another dose, like, but it will be like 56 days apart. There's just like new studies to increase its effectiveness. Also, like people 18 and older are eligible for that. The effectiveness is 67% effective in preventing severe COVID, 2 weeks after the injection, and 75% effective after 28 days. And it's currently available for school employees and daycare workers. Okay. Uh, Now I want to talk briefly about the common side effect of these viruses. So like we have a vaccine clinic here, and like we have a lot of coworkers who get vaccinated. So the most common like side effect is injection site pain. Sometimes swollen lymph nodes, fever, headache, muscle pain, fatigue, sometimes nausea and vomiting, and most likely like uh, after the second dose. Sometimes some people like develop like these symptoms or like stronger symptoms of headache or muscle pain after the first dose if they had the virus before. And also the interesting thing, like people, I think 65 and older are less likely to develop a severe side effect from the vaccine. Uh, Also, like if like I would recommend or encourage anyone who got the vaccine to go to use the VSafe app and try to report their symptoms, the symptoms that they develop. It will be very helpful. And I put some information. I will leave it here just in case someone want to take a picture for that. These are the information about the application. Yeah, so I think like I will give the chance to Dr. Garo if he wants to add anything. I know that he wants to talk about vaccine hesitancy, and he has a lot of information which I really enjoy. Was I watch it all on YouTube.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
So he did a great job explaining all of that. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you.
And thank you for you guys, taking some time to meet with us today. I've really been looking forward to this conversation, and I'm actually really looking forward to hearing from you and hearing your questions. So just to follow up, as Dr. Al-Janabi had mentioned, I really kind of wanted to sort of address some of the vaccine questions or concerns that I have heard and we have heard, and just kind of talking about what do these concerns mean? Are there things that I need to be worried about? So as Dr. Al-Janabi had explained, we got these vaccines to us in a pretty good amount of time. I mean, things happened really quickly. And I've heard from a number of folks that when they hear the term Operation Warp Speed applied to the vaccines, that made them nervous, that they wondered if corners were cut or if shortcuts were taken to get the vaccine out. And as Dr. Al-Janabi had said, the answer to that question, I'm very confident to say, is no. I don't think that things were rushed. I don't think that corners were cut. I don't think that shortcuts were taken. It really happened quickly on a couple of different levels. Number one is way back at the very beginning. Last spring, March and April, when we saw this tidal wave of COVID infection coming our way, the scientists at the CDC and at Moderna and Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer were ready due to all of the years, decades of research that had happened in immunology, as he described, and in virology. And we had the tools to help us identify that protein target that the vaccine could be used against. And so it happened fast when we were able to identify COVID, the protein, this messenger RNA protein, and develop the vaccine. That actually happened quickly. Good. And then it went into the clinical trials like he described. And that pace happened exactly the way it should have. No corners were cut. Everything happened exactly the right way. Truly, 100,000 people volunteered to be part of these clinical trials. And it happened. They followed and monitored for safety as well as the effectiveness of the vaccines. And that went from last spring all the way until, the end part of 2020. happened exactly the way it always should have happened. And then guess what? Then it became warped again. And we all saw what happened after the Food and Drug Administration commissioners met and gave that emergency use authorization that Dr. Al-Janabi described. You saw what happened. The vaccines were loaded on the trucks and loaded on the airplanes. They were taken off the loading docks and out they came. And that happened very quickly. Now, in years past, in previous vaccines, the manufacturers would have waited. They would have sat back and waited to manufacture the vaccines until they got approval. But this time, the federal government said to the manufacturers, no, don't wait. We can't afford to wait months and months and months for you to produce these. The federal government said to the manufacturers, you know what? We're going to guarantee your investment. We're going to buy these vaccines. Even if we don't give approval, we're not going to let you lose money on this. So while they were getting ready to be approved, they started to manufacture. And again, you saw what happened on television. You saw the trucks, the airplanes. It was great. So in my mind, Operation Warp Speed really happened at the beginning. We found the target. The scientists were great. They identified it, made the vaccines happen, and it slowed down the way it should have for the clinical trials, done right. And then it sped up again, and out the vaccines came to be given. So when I hear from folks that are concerned, did this happen too quickly? Did Operation Warp Speed, was this not a good thing? In my mind, it's a good thing. Here in a year from the first time that the global pandemic was called, a year ago today, now we have vaccines. Incredible, really great. Another question that I often hear is, so which vaccine should I get? Should I get the Moderna, or should I get the Pfizer, or should I get the Johnson & Johnson? And to which I say, yes, whichever vaccine is available is the best vaccine for you. And I'm sure Dr. Al-Janabi will agree with me that all three of these vaccines are incredibly effective. Incredibly. And now I'm an old guy. I'm an older guy than Dr. Al-Janabi. And I've been doing this a long time. My career has been pretty long. Never in my lifetime, in my career, did I ever expect to see 3 vaccines against a deadly virus that would be so effective. In my mind, none of them are inferior to the others. I've heard people say, well, the efficacy for the Johnson & Johnson is less, so maybe I should just wait and get one of the others. No, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is very good. Nearly 100% effective in preventing death from COVID. Wow, right? When we see that 85% number compared to the 94% number, remember that the Johnson & Johnson studies happened a little later and in countries where some of these new variants that we're hearing about exist. And so in my mind, they all stack up equally well, and none of them are second rate. I think they're all very good. So which vaccine is the best one for you? It's the vaccine that you can get, no question. And again, Dr. Al-Janabi did a wonderful job sort of explaining that these vaccines don't contain virus. You can't get COVID from the vaccines. Doesn't contain any DNA, genetic material. It doesn't change your DNA. Can't. There's nothing in it that is causing cancer. For those of you who haven't met me before today, my story is I'm a cancer doctor. And I practiced oncology as a cancer specialist for 30 years. And you know what, guys, I hate cancer. I hate what cancer does to people and families. I hate cancer. I also hate COVID, by the way, but I hate cancer. And I wouldn't ask anybody that I love, my wife, my children, my friends, you, I wouldn't ask you to do anything if I thought that it was going to increase your risk of cancer. Nothing about this, the way they work, the way they're manufactured, the ingredients in them. In my mind, there's no cancer risk at all. None. Another common concern is, does it contain embryos? Does it come from fetuses? Do these vaccines have human tissue, blood products? You know, for folks that have philosophical or religious objections to, you know, blood products or, you know, things that come from fetuses or embryos, good question. None whatsoever. These vaccines are all manufactured in the laboratory using a technology called recombinant technology, which we use in all sorts of situations. A lot of our cancer drugs are produced using that type of technology. These vaccines, same way. There's nothing in this that contains any human tissue or embryos at all. No blood products, none whatsoever. There was a rumor going around on social media that I hear that these vaccines will make you infertile or cause sterility or infertility. And you know, when I hear questions and concerns, I humbly try to get to the root cause of, well, where is this coming from? You know, why is that a concern? Where's that question coming from? Well, here's what I found out. It turns out there was a German physician who has been an anti-vaxxer his whole life. He's been against vaccines of all types. And in late 2020, he put out a theory on social media that the way that these COVID vaccines work could cross-react with a protein that's present in the placenta of a pregnant woman and could potentially affect that protein and could lead to sterility and infertility. Well, his theory was completely debunked, completely. His postings were taken off of social media for spreading misinformation. But you know how social media is. Once something gets out, it's kind of hard to put it back in the box again, right? So completely debunked. But I'm also going to make another little confession. I'm a bit of a nerd, right? So when I hear these sorts of things, I kind of go back to the science, right? And I did every word, every sentence of the applications from the companies to the Food and Drug Administration. And I really wanted to understand, is there anything about these vaccines that would cause infertility or sterility? And there's none. Furthermore, for the people that volunteered on the clinical trials to get these vaccines approved, included women. And when they were doing the clinical trials, they said to the women on the clinical trials, try not to get pregnant while you're on the clinical trial. But, you know, we all know how that happens. And some women did get pregnant while they were on the clinical trials. And the good news is there were equal number of healthy, successful pregnancies in the clinical trials for women who got pregnant, whether they got the placebo or got the actual vaccine, identical, no difference whatsoever. So in my mind, that answers the question. I don't think there's anything about these vaccines that would make me concerned that it would cause for infertility or sterility, none whatsoever. People have been concerned, well, you know, these vaccines have only been out for, you know, a short period of time. What do we know about their long-term side effects, the long-term safety? Well, you're right. We really haven't known about these vaccines, these particular COVID vaccines for long, 10 months max, maybe. But we know about these types of vaccines for a long time. As Dr. Al-Janabi had said, we've been using these types of vaccines and studying these vaccines for all kinds of other conditions. And we have a lot of evidence to say that there really does not appear to be any long-term complications, long-term concerns, about the COVID vaccines. And again, I got one. I asked my people that I love to get one, and I wouldn't ask any of us to do that if I felt that there was a risk, if the risks were present. I've had a lot of people say, well, I'd rather get my immunity the natural way and get real COVID, get infected, rather than getting immunity from the vaccine. Well, no, I mean, actually, the dangers, the risks of a naturally occurring infection with COVID are great, right? Look how many people we've lost in this country and across the world from COVID, right? It's a deadly illness. I hope that everyone who's on this call is healthy and safe, and that your families are healthy and safe. And I pray that you haven't suffered. Anybody that you know and love, suffered greatly from COVID. I will tell you that I've lost a number of patients from COVID. It's real. And in my mind, the risks of naturally occurring COVID are great, and the risks of the vaccines is very small. So on balance, I believe, and I'm sure Dr. Al-Janabi will agree with me, that if we look at the risks and benefits of getting the vaccine, boom, the benefits are great and the risks are very small. One more question, then maybe we can turn it over to you guys for some questions. But what happens after I get vaccinated, right? So it's important to remember that when we get the vaccine, it protects us from getting infected. It protects us from getting sick, but it doesn't necessarily prevent us from coming in contact with COVID. So even after we've been vaccinated, guess what? We still need to mask up. We still need to wash our hands and avoid large crowds and maintain social distance, because it's possible I may not get sick, but I could be potentially transmitting the virus to somebody else who might get sick. So even after we get the vaccine, we need to don't let our guard down. We're so close. We still need to do all of these things, just as we've always been doing. How about if I stop there and maybe we can answer some of the questions that's in the chat room? Does that sound okay? Is this working out for everybody?
Yeah, we have some questions in the chat, so I think we can start to ask some of those. And if individuals have any questions that come up as we're talking, please continue to add them into the chat. So one of the questions that we have, are all of these vaccines to be administered similar to other vaccines like the flu vaccine and others?
Dr. Al-Janabi, I'll take a stab at this, and then you can follow up if you would like. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk for a little bit about what happens when you get the vaccine, right? So some people may have had allergies to other vaccines or to medications or to food or bee stings. And the good news is, even if you have a history of allergy to something else, there really is no greater risk of having an allergy to these COVID vaccines. When we get the vaccines, they're pretty pure. They don't contain an awful lot of preservatives. And a lot of people that have reactions to medicines or other vaccines really are allergic to the preservatives and not the actual vaccine. And so these vaccines really don't contain an awful lot except the vaccine, right? So what's interesting about these vaccines that makes Dr. Al-Janabi and my job interesting is that when we crack the vial open to start giving the doses, we have a very short window to give the vaccines out. We can't let it sit on the shelf because it doesn't have a lot of preservatives. So, you know, once we get it open, we really need to make sure we have exactly number of people to give all of the doses that are in that little jar, that little vial. We don't want to waste any of this precious commodity, right? Right now, it appears that the Moderna and the Pfizer and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines do have effectiveness against the current strains of COVID and likely some of the variants that we're hearing about. Now, in getting back to your question, I really haven't forgotten it. We give a flu shot. We ask people to get a flu shot every year because the flu virus strains change from year to year. We may need to get other COVID vaccines in a year, depending on what these mutated strains do, depending what our immunity does over a year's period of time. And I'm very confident that really smart scientists, really smart people are looking at that. And we're going to know more whether we need to give these vaccines repeatedly, annually, perhaps like the flu shot. We'll know soon whether that's really necessary or not. So, Dr. Al-Janabi, any thoughts on that?
No, I'm good. Like you cover all the question. Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Another question here. They've heard that Moderna has more side effects, especially after the second dose compared to the Pfizer vaccine. Is this true?
Okay, what I'm seeing, like it will be like a small difference. I think they are the same, only small difference. And as I tell you, like patient less than 65 are more likely to develop some severe general symptoms. It's not like it's something like fatigue, muscle ache. It's not like very severe, like it's not like very dangerous symptoms like problem with the breathing or like heart rate issues. Is just like general muscle aches or fever, like mild fever, and all of them, like if they develop it, they can just get like the regular pain medicine. Also, I don't recommend, like I hear from patient, can I get something like Tylenol or ibuprofen before I get the vaccine? I don't recommend that. If you did not develop these symptoms after that, after you get the shot, don't take any pain medicine. I think that like even if there is a difference, it's like it's very minimal, and yeah, both of them has these side effects, but there is not like a huge difference between them. Okay.
Excellent. Okay, this is a question that I have heard quite a bit in the community as well, so this is a good one. Can you or should you get a vaccine if you've already had COVID? You've already tested positive for COVID. Should you still get the vaccine? And how soon after you've been positive for COVID should you get the vaccine?
Okay. Can I answer this question? Yep. Okay. So, like after you finish your quarantine, after you've been asymptomatic, it's recommended, like it's not recommended, but it's advisable to wait for 90 days before you get your shot. Like if you get it before the 90 days, there is no issue. But the idea that within the 90 days you are protected, like you have some antibodies in your body. So during this period, we will give the chance for more people to get the vaccine while like they don't have these antibodies. So like I advise to wait for 90 days, then get the vaccine. But like if there is any circumstances that you have to take the vaccine, as soon as you finish your quarantine, you are asymptomatic, it's acceptable to take it. I don't know if Dr. Guerrero want to add something for that.
I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to come off mute, which I'm sure would have made everybody happy. They wouldn't have to hear me anymore. Yeah, I agree. You know, what I say to folks is that you can get the vaccine as soon as you're out of your quarantine. We've been asking folks who recently had COVID to maybe like sit in the second row, just wait a little bit. Right now, while the vaccine supply is a little bit limited, we can immunize individuals who maybe don't have any immunity whatsoever. And then as our supplies increase, then you could go ahead and get your vaccine at any time. Doesn't hurt necessarily to get the vaccine before the 90 days. With the variants that are coming, it might be a good idea. But really, you can probably wait the 90 days, or you can get it when it becomes available. The only reason that you absolutely need to wait the 90 days is if you were sick with COVID and you got convalescent plasma or a monoclonal antibody treatment, which are treatments that are given to people that are sick from COVID. And you would know if you had that type of infusion, then we definitely need to wait the 90 days.
Wonderful. Okay. How long does immunity last after you've received your COVID vaccine?
Dr. Al-Janabi, you want to take this one?
You can go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, so great question. So as of now, we know that the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, we've been studying them for 9-10 months after they first were in the clinical trials. And it appears that there is still good immunity even 9 to 10 months later. That's good. Again, really smart scientists are watching this closely to determine if it extends even longer. And that's sort of the question that we don't yet know is this something that we'll need a booster dose later? As of right now, we're going to just get vaccinated and hope that the immunity lasts and trust that if that immunity lessens, we'll know it and we'll get another shot if we have to.
Okay. We've got some excellent questions here. So, how long does it take for the vaccine to work? I believe Dr. Nawar, you included that in your presentation if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, like for the vaccine to be like to get the maximum effectiveness. So I put it here, like for Pfizer to be 95% effective, like in preventing the virus 1 week after the second dose for the Pfizer. For the Moderna, it's like 2 weeks after the second dose. And for the Johnson & Johnson, like 67%, 2 weeks after, and then 75% after 4 weeks. So that's like, I want to mention the importance of keep wearing the mask, keep social distancing. Like I know, like you can get some immunity during the first days, but like the peak advantage we got it after this period of time. So that's why I'm like, and you can like, I advise to keep like wearing the mask, keep social distancing, even after this period,
Excellent. And just to go off of that question, can you speak to how important is it to get your second dose? If you are getting the Moderna or the Pfizer and they've scheduled your second dose out, how important is it to follow up and make sure you get that second shot?
Okay. Yeah, second dose is important because like I want to explain the idea of second dose, why like some vaccine are in one dose, why one is 2 dose. So like scientists saw that after the first dose, the effectiveness is less than like the level that they want, like which is the 95% or like full immunity or full coverage. So they make studies, they make research, and they found that the second dose can increase the effectiveness of the body response to the vaccine, which make the immune cells and the antibodies. So you'll get like the maximum protection. So if you get like the first dose only, you'll get protection, but it's partial. Like it's not like 95% effective. So that's the importance of the second dose.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there plans to make a vaccine specific to younger children?
I will give, I mean, if Dr. Garo has an idea about that, vaccine for children.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. So currently, Moderna is conducting clinical trials for adolescents. So for individuals between the ages of 12 and 18, which is the current level of age for the emergency use authorization. So there are clinical trials currently underway across the country looking at individuals down to the age of 12. I know that Pfizer has also begun clinical trials down to the age of 12. I believe that there are plans underway once that enters, phase 3 of the clinical trials, that they're going to begin to start to look at even younger children. I really applaud the way that this is being done. It's being done the right way. Adolescents are not, just young adults. Their metabolism, their immunity is very different than old guys like me. And even more important is our children. They're not just little small people. Their immune system is very different. So we want to make sure we understand those differences and develop a vaccine dose and schedule and everything in a way that's not only effective in preventing illness in them, but make sure that it's safe. So I anticipate that we should have some information about adolescents, maybe by summertime. And I'm hopeful that clinical trials will be underway for younger children by the late summer to fall. The good news is that it seems that adolescents and children don't suffer the complications from COVID to the same rate as do adults. So they're coming, but we're waiting for the science.
Thank you, Dr. Garrow. I actually have a specific follow-up question for you. And if Dr. Nawari, you have anything to add to it, please don't hesitate. This question says, Dr. Garrow, I've heard that COVID-19 vaccine can mimic breast cancer. Should we advise women not to get a mammogram after receiving a vaccine?
Yeah, great question. So as Dr. Nawar had said, after you get the dose, you get the immunization, our immune system is whoosh, right? And they're gearing up. They're making the antibodies. They're making this infection fighting machinery is coming. And one of the things that can occur are painful swollen lymph nodes. So, for example, I got my COVID vaccine right here, and a couple days later, I had some swollen lymph nodes right here. All right, because this area drains into these lymph nodes here. It's not uncommon. Now, the breast tissue goes way up here, under the arm, and there are lymph nodes under the arm that can sometimes swell. There are actually even lymph nodes in the tail of the breast and in breast tissue. And so sometimes on mammograms, we'll actually see those lymph nodes look a little large, right? And a mammogram can't make a distinction between, is this a mass, is it breast cancer, or is it an enlarged lymph node? We don't know that. What I am recommending to individuals, if you're due for an annual screening mammogram, I would probably wait maybe a month after you got your COVID vaccine to get the mammogram, just so that it's not confusing. If, however, you feel a lump in your breast that needs attention, or if your doctor feels that there's something that they need to assess with a mammogram or an ultrasound, if they're worried about it, go ahead and get it done. If it's a routine screening, I would probably say wait a month if you can before you get the mammogram, just so it's not confusing.
Excellent. Thank you. It looks like we have just one more question here. And again, if anyone has any final questions, feel free to add them into the chat or the Q&A I see here. So there's a comment here that says a lot of people that they talk to are afraid to get the vaccine because it may react with medications they are taking. Can either of you speak to how the vaccine may impact individuals' medication routine?
Okay, I can talk about like general medications, and maybe Dr. Garo can talk of if some patient is on like any chemotherapy or under radiation. So like for me as a PCP, we do the vaccine clinic weekly. We saw a lot of patients that they have multiple health issues. Some people are on blood thinners. Some people are on like medication for chronic diseases like for hypertension, diabetes, or any other issues. We didn't see any interaction between the vaccine, like there's not any interaction between vaccine and these medications. So it's safe. But I mean, it will be better to hear from Dr. Garo about if someone is on chemotherapy or on radiation, is it better to proceed with the vaccine or not?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. I apologize. That was one of the nurses in our vaccine clinic here today, and she was just calling with a question. And I'm glad that happened, because I want you to understand and that when you come for the vaccine, when you get your dose of the vaccine, we'll ask questions about allergies or other medical conditions. Yes, it's safe for someone who's on chemotherapy or radiation to get the COVID vaccines. Now, there are some vaccines that contain viruses, polio vaccine being one, that we are a little hesitant to give to folks that are on immunosuppression medicines or chemotherapy, because they could potentially get a viral illness related to the virus that's in the vaccine. But as Dr. had said earlier, there's no virus in these vaccines at all, and it's perfectly fine for someone who's on chemotherapy or radiation to get the vaccine. My only request, my only suggestion would be your personal physician, your oncologist, your radiation oncologist knows your history best, and just check and clear it with them to say, hey, I'm scheduled to get my COVID vaccine, just to make sure it's okay from their standpoint, but no reason to be concerned.
Thank you.
I did get a follow-up to that, which I think you covered really well, but they just wanted to double check if an individual was on dialysis, would that be still safe to get the vaccine?
Yep, sure is. And in fact, it's recommended, because we know that folks that have chronic underlying health conditions, including kidney failure, are at greater risk for complications if they get COVID. And so, yeah, being on dialysis or having end-stage kidney disease or kidney failure is not a reason to not get the vaccine. In fact, it would be recommended.
Thank you. Right, we do have one other question here. It's an excellent question that I don't think we've really talked about. So in talking about herd immunity, with COVID specifically, we're really focusing on trying to reach that herd immunity. But why is it not discussed as much with more common viral infections like influenza? So why are we placing such a high emphasis on herd immunity with COVID when we don't necessarily talk about that as much with other infections like the flu?
You want to take this one or shall I?
Yes, please. Can you take
Yeah,
this one?
please.
Okay, so I think because like the complication that we got from COVID, like the number of death that we got, the weird way that our body, like or the body of some people react to the vaccine, to the way that treat to like multi-organ failure or to respiratory failure, make us like talking about like this kind of immunity, and we try to fight this virus as much as we could. So like we hope that we got like a good immune coverage for all the viruses, but like the focus on COVID because of the dangers of this virus. Like the problem with COVID, you could not expect how your body will react. We see like a lot of young people in their 30s, in their 40s, or sometimes in their 20s, and they died from it because like no one can expect how your immune or how your body will react to the virus.
It looks like that is all we have for questions. We'll give it a couple more minutes, but I think we'll be wrapping up early today. I do want to say thank you so much to both Dr. Nawar and Dr. Garrow for giving your time. I know with COVID how incredibly busy you are, really doing the work in the community and getting vaccines out there and educating the community. And so your role is so critical that we appreciate you sharing your knowledge and expertise with all of us today. If anybody has any questions that do come up after the presentation, I am happy to receive those. Is it okay if we do get questions, if I filter those to you, Dr. Nawar and Dr. Garrow?
No problem for me.
Excellent. Okay, so if anyone has any questions that seem to pop up after this presentation, that happens to me all the time, you should have my email, or the contact that shared this event with you does have my email. So please do not hesitate to send a follow-up question to me if you have them, and I'll make sure that Dr. Nawar and Dr. Garrow get those and get some answers for you. So thank you all for giving us your time today. I hope that you learned a lot and feel more comfortable about the COVID vaccine and your choice in getting it or not. So have a lovely day. The sun is shining in Erie, so I hope you all get out there and get some sun. I know, Dr. Garrow, I hope it is down your way too.
No. I'll be right up. I'm on my way.
All right. We'll save the sun for you. Enjoy your day, everyone, and take care, okay?
Thank you.